Hey, welcome to Genre Chat. I'm Caleb Walton, and today I'm excited to welcome Edie Melson back to the show. Hey, Edie, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you back. I think you and Sherry Lynn had done one on steampunk a couple of maybe I think it was last year, and that was just a great show. So I'm excited to have you back on with us. We were talking a few minutes before the before we started recording about the different things that are coming up. I know Blue Ridge is right around the corner in April, no May, not April, in May, and there's something else. There's another event you and Diane Mills have got in this month actually.
Right. We also do Mountainside Marketing Retreat and Conference. It's a hands-on conference specifically for writers with social media marketing and branding. It's a working conference. So we
Hmm.
expect people to come and bring their laptops and get ready to dig in and work. And because of that, we limit attendees to 50. And so we do still have a few spots left. It will be the 18th through the 22nd of January. And so you can go to mountainsidemarketingconference.com and find out all the details.
And that's actually at the same location as the Blue Ridge Conference, right, over in Ridgecrest of Black Mountain?
Yep, it sure is. Sure is.
That's awesome. That would be great to get to go there two times in one year. It's a wonderful place. If you've never been, it's really good. And that's actually what I wanted to talk about this afternoon is about the blogging and the marketing and the social media. That's actually one of my writer's New Year's resolutions is to get a little bit more hands-on when it comes to the marketing and branding, especially because I've heard both of you and Diane talk about how important that is. I can't remember if it was you, it was on your blog or something else that I had seen, but it was like talking about how your brand as an author at times can almost be more important than what you've written because it's how people perceive you. So first, does every writer need to be on social media and have an active blog, or is it just for certain types of writers?
Well, I think that one of the things we have to look at as writers, we have to look at the way things normally work in publishing.
Hmm.
And unless something bizarre happens, yes, we all need to have a presence online, whatever that looks like. Now, if you're already a best-selling author and you've hit the New York Times bestseller list, then of course you're going to have fans and connections that the rest of us don't have. So you're not going
Hmm.
to work as hard. But for the rest of us, our fans and our readers are found in the digital universe. So with a little bit of qualifier, yes, everybody needs to be online somehow.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's that. Like I say, that's one of the things I want. I do a lot of social media stuff, and I've actually thought about starting a blog. So I'm really excited to learn about more about that from you because if I remember correctly, your blog, The Right Conversation, was on the 101 best websites for writers this year, or I think it was last year by Writers Digest.
It
And
was
that was
2018 and 2019.
really impressive. It's a really good blog. If anybody hasn't looked at it, it's really good.
It's actually 2017, 2018. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't know it did already for 2019.
It's not here.
Well, what are some of the different types of blogs that writers do? I know some people do blogs for devotions. I know your blog is one actually specifically for writers. I mean, what are other popular blogs that are out there that someone might consider doing to sort of get more outreach?
Well, the important thing with blogging is twofold. Number one, you want to do something that people would be interested in. Racing snails is probably not going to be your best topic. uh,
You might get 3 or 4 followers. You never know. But
it depends on how you spin it. But you also want to choose a topic that's sustainable, something that you will keep your interest up in. Because the point of a blog is for name recognition and to build a tribe. Even if that tribe isn't specifically going to be the people who are reading your books, they're all going to know people who will be reading your books. So
mm,
you've got to have that community base, and a good way to build that is through a website or through a blog on your website. Now, it's also, I like to warn people that blogging is not a one size fits all proposition. Some people hate blogging. And if that's
really.
you, then chances are your blog posts are going to reflect that. And so you've got to be careful. It's important to have a presence online. And if you're somebody who can't sustain a once a week schedule for blogging, maybe your best bet is to be on a group blog. I have several writers, several authors who are on my blog, The Right Conversation, and they count that as their blogging because my blog gets upwards of 40 to 50,000 hits a month. And so that gives them the kind of numbers that they need. So it could be that blogging is a great fit, or it could be that it's not the best fit. The thing of it is you've got to have a way to have an on-site presence that you own, whether that's a blog or a website. You've got to have a way for that to show up in a search engine and a way to build your email list. Blogging is generally the easiest way to do all of that, but there are other ways to do it.
Newsletters, things like that, I guess would fall into the same category. I know Molly Jo really has a newsletter and a blog and does a lot on social media. So she's kind of doing all three different angles to get even more, get even more followers.
Yep.
How do you go about starting a blog? Like if you've never, like if you're like me, you've never done it before, it's a completely new field. How do you recommend starting it and picking the topic that's right for you? Does it necessarily need to reflect the type of thing that you're writing, or?
It doesn't. It absolutely doesn't. Like, for instance, I'm the member of a very large church. We have 5,000 members. And early on in my writing career, my brand was writing for military families. Well, we live in the upstate of South Carolina, so there's no military base around. Nobody in my church, or very few people in my church, have family members who are active duty military. But because I had added value to that community, and because I was part of that community, whenever I published a book, they all got behind me. They were all my cheerleaders. So even if they didn't need to buy my book or weren't interested in the topic, they all knew somebody who did. And
at the end of the day, it's all about word of mouth, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And so that's what you're trying to do with your blog. You're trying to build this community. So I recommend that you start out by brainstorming some things that you think you might like to write about. And then writing about 30 posts. And don't limit yourself in those posts. Just every day, write a blog post and see at the end of those 30 posts what focus you have ended up with. Because it may be that you thought you were going to be writing about this one particular topic, but the thing you wrote most often about was over here. So you've kind of shown yourself which one you want to go with. And then I recommend starting out with a free site. Yeah, the WordPress free site, or the Blogger, the Blogspot free site, either one of those. And the reason for that is because it's like buying your first home. You know what you want in a house until you've lived in a house. So I recommend you rent a house first.
And I like that.
What you want before you spend all the money or the effort to build your own site from scratch. You know, get used to the medium, learn how it's done, and then after 6 months to a year, move to wherever you want to be permanently.
Now, as you're discovering what type of blogger you are with these posts, are you talking about writing them for yourself, or are you talking about going ahead and starting the blog, or do you like build it up ahead of time and then just schedule the release dates?
I recommend that you build it up ahead of time and then schedule it out, because and you can go ahead and start writing blog posts right off the bat, because you won't, you're going to have time, a building time. So you'll have time to do some tweaking and some changing. The thing about blogging is, though, a blog has to be focused, or the topic of the blog in general needs to be focused enough so that a search engine can categorize the site. So if I were writing for writers and every weekend I posted a devotion and I posted a recipe during the week and I did an article on photography, well, suddenly Google doesn't know where to put my site.
So, I guess that's similar to where they say write your book with it in mind where it's going to sit on the shelf or what section it's going to be in.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, I'm not saying that you should limit your topics, but find an overarching category that all of the different things that you're interested in writing will fit under. I was talking to a client and she wanted to write slice of life sort of things, but she also loved butterflies. And what she did is she came up with the idea of a butterfly life. How butterflies flower to flower, how butterflies do this, how all of these different things. So when she was writing each blog post, it had this twist in the post that compared whatever she was writing about to the life of a butterfly. Suddenly,
Interesting.
she knows where to put that blog site so that you can rise to the top in the search engine optimization.
That makes a lot of sense. And that's also very original because I'm guessing there's not that many Life of a Butterfly blogs out there, whereas there might be 100 Slice of Life blogs. It kind of helps it stand out.
Right. So
exactly.
it's important to kind of think, what is my overarching focus or theme going to be, and how am I going to write to that theme without limiting what God wants me to say.
Interesting. What's the general structure of a blog post? I know there's a lot of, no matter where you go, there are different rules for what's expected with word count and how you open, how you close.
Well, it depends on the type of blog you're writing as to how long it should be. If you're writing a really deep subject, like I have a friend of mine who lost a daughter to teenage suicide. And so
Oh,
her
no.
blog is all about that and about preventing suicide. And so her posts tend to be 1,200 to 1,500 words long because you kind of need that much to get into that deep a topic. I have another friend who writes very pithy, interesting takes on the world, and her posts are 300 words. So it really kind of depends on your voice. One of the things you want to make sure, though, is you want to make sure that you remember that as the person writing the blog or who owns the blog, you are the host. Okay, so it's up to you to make the posts easy to find in search engines, make it easy for people to comment and reply. So you want to use an open-ended question or a call to action at the end of every post to get the conversation started, because as the host, it's your responsibility to start the conversation and to keep it going. You also want to make sure that you are keeping in mind that everything you're writing is for the reader. It is not for myself. And so we want to try to avoid using words like you. When we say you should do this or you should do that, it comes across very, very preachy and almost condemning. And instead, what we want to say is, well, I've found in my life it works better when I do this, or we want to try to do this or whatever. But you want a very open and safe place for people to come and interact.
I like that. I like that a lot. And that goes back to what someone referred to once as the golden rule in writing is make the reader happy.
Yes.
So that you always want to make sure that that's the end result.
I don't know that you want to make them happy. You want to make them feel valued and engaged.
I like that. That's actually a lot better, valued and engaged. Because like the thing you were talking about, your friend has the blog for families of suicide victims, and that doesn't necessarily make you feel happy, but it can make you feel very valued and very engaged.
Exactly.
So you're right. That's a lot more of a precise goal to aim for. What are different things that, like, I know you've had your blog start, that blog's been around for a long time. And if you have you've already gotten into the flow of it, do you still do a lot of blogs at once and then release them? And is it like a once a week? Is there some that are daily or monthly, or is there a generally accepted standard for that?
Well, I recommend that when you're starting a blog, you do no more than once a week. Once a week is a good solid time to grow a blog following.
Mhm.
If you're blogging 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, it becomes your primary writing. And unless you want that to be a major stream of income, or unless you do like I did with the Right Conversation, you have a team of people who write for you, that's really not sustainable. So I don't recommend that. I do recommend that you blog on a schedule, meaning if you put your blog out on Mondays, it needs to go out at 8 a.m. every Monday.
Mm.
You've got to build credibility and reliability with your audience, because there are a lot of choices out there. So they can go
There
other.
are. There are a lot of choices out there, which is why it's important to use these tools to help yourself stand out in the right way. Do you have to be very tech savvy? I mean, how user friendly are these websites that you were talking about, the WordPress and the other places like that?
WordPress is a little bit more techy than Blogger. Personally, I like Blogger because I can customize it a lot more. The WordPress, the free version of WordPress, is really basically to get you used to using WordPress and then move into a website. When you move to a paid site, WordPress has been the industry standard. That's what I built
Hmm.
all of mine on. But Squarespace is coming up, Wix is coming up. There are a lot of good options out there, but you want to make sure that you have a platform where you can do correct formatting. People read very differently on the internet or on a digital screen than they do in person. They read
Mm.
about 25% slower, and they read for a different reason. They read
Really?
information. They do not read necessarily for entertainment unless they're reading an ebook on a
Hmm.
reader of some kind. Think about when you go to the internet to read something, you're generally searching for something. You're trying to find answers about something, or you're trying to improve yourself in some way, whether it's a spiritual improvement, or I want to learn how to do this, or I want to learn how to do that. Whatever it is, it's generally something that's going to improve your life. So you need to be able to format your blog in block formatting, which means no indentions, extra space between paragraphs. You want to make sure that you're using a sans serif font. That's a font that's not like Times New Roman. It would be something like Arial, something that's
Hmm.
a little blockier, but it's easier to read on a screen, because truthfully, about 65 to 70% of your readers are going to be reading your blog posts on their phones. So it's got to be easy to read.
Mm.
You
And
want
you don't think about that because the formatting for a book is totally different. You do indent and you use the. I get
yeah,
that. That makes a lot of sense.
exactly. So, and you want to familiarize with keywords. You want to make sure that you know how to do correct titling for a blog post so that it shows up in a search engine. I mean, literally, I teach weeks long seminars on how to do blogging. So, and everything I teach on how to have an effective blog, you can find the information for free on my website, The Right Conversation.
That's amazing. And attend the Mountainside Marketing Conference for even more for even more information. I know, and I actually heard you and Diane Mills speak about this at Blue Ridge last year. When you're going for different ideas or maybe song quotes or pictures, you have to be very very careful about copyright laws. What are some, I'm sure, very obvious mistakes that you've seen some people make with that, and how can that go? I'm assuming they can go very wrong for a writer's reputation if you don't follow the rules.
It can, and it can cost you a lot of money. You can never Google an image and use that image for a blog post.
Hmm.
Copyright infringement is not based on whether or not you earn any money off of what you borrowed.
Hmm.
It has to do with whether or not you have used something or stolen something that is not yours. So you want to make sure that you only go to reputable sites that provide copyright-free or free sites. I recommend Pixabay and Unsplash. Those are the two that I recommend. Uh,
Pixabay and Unsplash.
Yep. And then also you want to make sure that unless a song is in public domain, you never use the lyrics of a song in a post.
Hmm.
That's a pet peeve of a lot of editors. People think, oh, I'm just using a line or two, but the fact of
Hmm.
the matter is, fair use is the exception that allows us to quote things that are covered by copyright law. Fair use does not apply for poetry or songs.
Very true. Very true. Now, what exactly classifies as public domain?
Public domain means nobody owns the copyright.
Okay.
Public domain, if you don't do anything and you have something that's copyrighted, after 70 years it goes into public domain. But it's also possible to will your copyright to heirs. It's possible to transfer a copyright. It's possible to extend a copyright. So just because something is older than 70 years doesn't mean that it's automatically in copyright. And you can just do a Google search for songs in public domain and figure that out, whether or not they're in public domain.
And that's probably why on certain books, if you're a nerd like me and look at the copyright pages, that's why on certain books there'll be a long list, copyright this year and this year and this year, because they've renewed it several times to make sure it doesn't go into public domain.
Exactly. And
Okay.
that's why in a lot of science fiction and fantasy, you see authors writing their own songs, writing their own poetry,
Hmm.
and things like that, because they can't get the copyright to be able to, can't get the permission to use something. So
Hmm.
now a way to get around not being able to use lyrics in a blog post is you could link or embed a YouTube video on your blog.
Oh, because then it's just a link to where it's already posted. You don't have the responsibility of okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so you have that as well. But I know a lot of people like to write devotions about songs, and they'll say, well, I'm just going to quote this. And, you can't do that. It's just not legal.
That's true. That's very true. And that's something to keep in mind, especially for new people. And it kind of leads into the next thing I was going to ask, as well as other common mistakes that you see. I mean, besides, copywriting or maybe not having it, like we were talking about, the font arranged in an easily readable way. What are some other common mistakes that you've seen from new bloggers or maybe even some mistakes that you've made that you've had to learn from over the years?
I think the biggest mistake is not titling blog posts correctly. One of the things that we're used to as writers is we love words. We love clever titles. We love things that make you think. And so I came up through the era of print. So when I would sell a magazine article, I'm looking for an article title that will stop somebody when they're looking through the table of contents, or as they're thumbing through, they go, ooh, this is intriguing. I want to read this. But the fact is, the internet is not thumb throughable. Nobody will ever see a clever title if it's not literal enough.
Hmm.
An example, if I had a blog where I shared recipes and I wanted to share a vegetarian chili recipe, if I titled that blog post "Too Hot to Handle Chili," I would miss the majority of my audience.
Because the Google search is not going to catch that when people search recipes for vegetarian chili.
Exactly. So a better blog post title would be "Best Vegetarian Chili Recipe Ever," because that's what people are going to type into the search engine to find that. And then I could title the actual recipe "Too Hot to Handle Chili." So I can still use the cleverness, but I can't use it in the title because search engines are literal, they're mathematical. And so you want to title your blog posts, each individual post, as closely to something somebody would type into a search engine as possible. So it's a little less clever, but it will get you a lot more page views.
That makes a lot of sense. It does. Now, I did have a question about the copyright. Does the same things apply there as it does to just general social media like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, things like that? Do the same copyright laws apply, or are they a little bit more flexible when it comes to sharing on like a public site like that?
Nope, they apply. They
Hmm.
apply. You see people break copyright rules all the time. You don't always see the consequences of that. I
Hmm.
cannot tell you how many well-known writers I have heard crying to me over the phone because they've accidentally used a photograph or an image that
Mm.
was, the copyright was owned by somebody, and they had now been sent a bill of several $1,000s.
Wow, that's a big mistake. That's a big consequence for an easy mistake.
Exactly,
Hmm.
exactly. Now, titles are not copyright. So if you want to
Really?
reference a song, you're welcome to use the title. You just can't use any of the lyrics.
Really? I did not realize that song titles weren't copyrighted. It's probably why there are so many with similar or the exact same title. Like if you search it on Spotify, there's so many with the same title.
Same thing with book titles. Any title, no titles can be copyrighted.
Hmm.
You can trademark a phrase, but you cannot copyright a title.
Now, what's the difference between a trademark, like a registered trademark, and a copyright?
A registered trademark costs you a lot of money.
That's the main difference. That's a very noticeable difference. Really? Now, is copywriting expensive, or is that something that's pretty affordable to do?
Well, anytime you take an idea and you translate that into a tangible medium, like if you have a lyric or a song, a melody going through your head, and you put it on paper and you write out the notes, that has become copyrighted. You are
Really? Okay, so it doesn't have to have like an official stamp, like a patent or something like that would.
Nope, nope. Now you may have to prove that it's yours, and you can copyright something, but it costs some money to do it. But really and truly, you are covered by the copyright law once you put something down. It doesn't mean somebody can't steal it, but it does mean that you are covered by the law if you can prove that you wrote it.
Interesting. Okay, and then you have to do the poor man's copyright where you mail it to yourself and then write your name over the seal.
That is actually an urban myth. That does not
Really?
end up in court.
Really? I
Yes.
did not. I've heard that all my life when you're doing, when you're doing something or writing something. I was like, well, mail yourself a copy of it. So that does not hold up in court like people say.
No, it does not. You will be laughed out of court. So,
Really? Well,
yes.
that I'm very glad. No, that's very good. So you got to think of a different way if you're gonna try to do it yourself. I did not know that. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about the social media aspects. I know we talked about it a little bit. Is it important to be on every social media platform? I mean, there's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so many different ones. What are the ones that you want to make sure you hit on?
It is very important to have a presence, to reserve your name, to have your website domain on all of the major social media networks. That would be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, Google Plus. I don't think I've left any out. But those are the main ones. You want to make sure that you have your name reserved, that you have an account on there. Now, as far as being active on something, I recommend that you're active on no more than 2 to 4 networks, because really and truly you can't be active efficiently on more than that.
That makes sense because you're going to lose track. Like you say, you don't want to make your plate too full that you're trying. Now, do you do the same thing on each one? I've seen some Facebook posts where it has the hashtag at the bottom of the post, and I wonder, is that because they use the same post on several different platforms, or do you try to keep each of them different and fresh?
There was a time when you could post the same thing on multiple platforms, but you really can't anymore.
Hmm.
Um, Facebook, for example, if you send something to your Facebook professional page from Hootsuite, it will be downgraded and shown to less people because it came from a
Hmm.
third-party app. Facebook wants you to be on Facebook, and they want you to stay on Facebook. And so, and in general, hashtags on Facebook don't help you a ton. There are a lot of people who will put something on Instagram and then they'll send it to Facebook. And with Instagram, you may have 15 or 20 hashtags, but that just doesn't translate on Facebook. So I may send out information, say, about the same blog post that I find valuable for writers. I may put it on my Facebook page, and I may also send it out on Twitter, but I'm going to do them separately.
Okay, and then of course, because you phrase things, because Facebook I think allows a lot more text in the post than Twitter does. You only have a certain amount to work with. Is that right? Is that right?
That is correct, but the most popular and most shared Facebook posts have less than 100 characters. So it's actually shorter than Twitter.
What is the acceptable length on Twitter?
Well, Twitter allows 280, but people still prefer the 140 count. Okay,
interesting. See, there's all these little rules and everything that you don't realize when you're new to that area of things. Well, what are some...
Another thing you want to be careful about is you want to make sure that you diversify your social media. You don't want to put all your social media eggs in one basket, because what happens if somebody gets mad at you and they report you as a spammer on Facebook, and Facebook calls a halt or puts a hold on your account until they can investigate, and all you have is Facebook as a way to get to your friends and followers, suddenly you have no way for people to find you or for you to find people. But if you're on Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest, then you can still find your audience. Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't like Twitter, so I'm going to do Facebook and Instagram. Well, I totally get that. I love Instagram. But the thing of it is, Facebook owns Instagram. So if your account on Facebook is suspended, your account on Instagram is suspended.
I didn't realize that. So it's important to make sure you go to 3 different sources and not just different platforms. It takes a lot of research.
Yep, it does.
What are some ways to increase social media following? I know everything that we've talked about can help increase social media following, with blogs and everything like that. What are other ways? I remember reading an article recently, and it was referencing the types of social media posts that people stop on the most and the types that are most often scrolled past.
Well, anything that doesn't have a visual component is going to get lost in social media. So you want to make sure that you have a compelling image, whether you're on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or whatever you're on. But the biggest thing is you want to make sure that whatever you're putting out there isn't self-serving. In other words, I shouldn't always be tweeting buy my book, read my blog, here's a new article, come to my book signing. If somebody goes to my Twitter page and those are the types of updates, then my Twitter page is nothing but a running commercial for me. There's nothing of value for my readers. So what I try to do is I try to be a resource for the people who follow me on social media. I want to make sure that I am putting them first in the stuff that I'm sharing. I don't want to be asking them to do something for me without having done a whole lot more for them first.
That makes a lot of sense, because ultimately, like you said, it's all about information. The internet's all about us looking, or the reader looking for information, not coming for something from you necessarily.
Exactly. So if everything, also people think that social media is a great way to sell books, and it's not. Social media is not advertising. It is building relationships. Marketing is advertising. And you do some marketing on social media, but you build the relationships first. For example, if I had come into this church that I'm part of, and I walked in on the first day I was there, and I went up to the pastor and I said, hey, I'm a writer. I would love for you all to take my books and do a study on them. And I think you should do a book signing for me. And I want you to sell all of these books. The whole church is going to be turned off and looking for a way to back away. But if I get into it and I am saying, how can I serve? How can I help? I want to become part of the team. Then as they get to know me better, they may say, oh, you're a writer. We'd love to use your book as a study or something. But I haven't pushed it down their throat. It's the same thing with social media. If we come in pushing and asking people to do stuff for us, it's a turnoff.
Exactly. I like that. And those are really good perspectives to keep in mind when you're trying to grow your following and you're thinking about getting into stuff. We only have a few minutes left, and I'm thank you for being on the show. I've learned a lot, and I can't wait to get my hands dirty with this stuff a little bit more. Um, do you have any like parting words of wisdom? If there was like one key piece of advice to give someone who's new to maybe even new to writing in general, what would that be?
Well, I have two thoughts. A lot of people say, I don't have anything published, so I don't have anything to say on social media. But the fact is, you're building relationships. And if you have friends in the real world, then you're interesting and you'll have friends in the digital world. So take
I
a
like
deep
that.
breath and approach it the same way. The other thing is people a lot of times will look at social media as something they do in addition to writing or something that pulls them away from writing. But the fact is that we all want to make a difference with our writing. We all want to make the world a better place. We want to be used by God. We just want to share our hearts and our messages. And we look at writing as the only way to do that and as social media as an interruption. But the fact of the matter is, a lot more people read my social media updates than will ever read my books. And I have the opportunity to be light, to share hope, to share love on social media. And I look at it as part of my calling, not an interruption to my calling.
I like that. I like that. Ultimately, writing is all about communication. And at its core, when you strip away all the political ads and everything, social media is also about communication. So it's sort of a perfect match for writers.
It really is. It really is.
I like that. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Everybody, keep in mind about the Mountainside Marketing Conference. What's some website? I know that you mentioned your website, The Right Proposal. I apologize, The Right Conversation. What's a website they can go on for more information about Blue Ridge or the Mountainside Marketing Conference?
The BlueRidgeConference.com has all the information for both events. There's tabs at the top about registering for both events. You can also find it at MountainsideMarketingConference.com, but BlueRidgeConference.com will get you everywhere.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on here with us. I enjoyed talking to you, and we will see you guys next week.
Sounds great. Thank you.